All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the world famous Prospect Avenue podcast. I am your host, Kris Baker, here in the bunker, the first podcast of calendar year 2024. Happy New Year. It's been a little bit since we've been together last time. I know I probably shouldn't say Happy New Year when we're like a week into the year, but we haven't seen each other here in like, I don't know, 10, 12 days, something like that. I think it was right around Christmas Eve, the last time we put a podcast out, getting prepped for the 2024 World Junior Championship. So it made sense to say Happy New Year to you all. But yeah, I was waiting for that tournament to end before getting back up here on the podcast train. That's what we're going to do today. Do a quick recap of all the Sabres prospects that were in action at the 2024 World Juniors, a few odds and ends to get to with a couple other prospects that did not take part in the tournament. But yeah, let's talk World Juniors real quick. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. I generally don't overemphasize the World Junior performances of these players. I mean, we're at the point now with technology and, subscriptions and whatnot, you get to see these players almost every week. And the World Juniors becomes just a smaller snapshot in time of the story that these players are telling over the course of a whole year. But it is a best on best for the most part, peer on peer tournament. And there's a lot to get to there to cover some really good performances from some Sabres prospects and one maybe disappointing statistical performance anyways for one. And we'll get into all that here, but I think to properly kick it off, first of all, congrats to the American team. Always great to see the U.S. win World Junior gold medal. That team was just deep, fast, skilled. They could score goals in bunches. They were really tough out the entire tournament, as expected. They were the clear favorite, in my opinion, coming into the event. But I want to also say congratulations to the Swedes. That was a great group. I love that mix of players that they had, especially that 04 group that has a rivalry brewing with those Americans going back to the under 18s a couple of years ago. And then, of course, those two teams rather, played each other last year in the bronze medal game at the 2023 World Juniors. But Sweden, I thought, did a great job, both on ice with their product, led by Noah Ostlund and Jonathan Lekkerimäki and Axel Sandin Pellikka and Liam Ogren. We'll get into that a little bit. But the fans too, I mean, what a great atmosphere at both rinks, but especially during the medal rounds. That's kind of what we anticipated with Sweden hosting this event. It's a very big tournament now in that country's hockey program. They follow it just as closely as we do over here in North America. And I thought they did a great job as hosts. So wanted to congratulate Sweden both on the ice as well as off the ice. It was a great performance. That country as a whole really showed out for the event. But yeah, we might as well just get right into it. I hated the way that tournament ended, by the way, with the Americans blowing kisses to the crowd at the end. I could have done without that. And, the Swedes were very frustrated too. And they, I think, vented their frustrations out. Noah Ostlund was one of the players out there late in the game, slashing, hacking and whacking, a little stick work out there. But it is what it is. Like I said, there's some animosity there between these two groups, the 04 Americans and the 04 Swedes. They're very familiar with each other. But yeah, some of that other stuff I could have done without. It was not the way that we wanted to end that tournament, but whatever, it's over and done with, and we'll move on. These players are all going to see each other again in the NHL for the years to come. So maybe if there's scores to settle, we'll get a look at that down the road. Hopefully not, though. Hopefully they all got it out of their system, but let's just dive right in. A couple performances here that we want to cover. I think we should start right at the top with Noah Ostlund, who drove the bus for Sweden's top even strength unit and ran their power play. He was just the catalyst for that Swedish attack. I know Jonathan Lekkerimäki was the team's leading goal scorer, but Noah Ostlund was the guy out there getting all the ice time, putting up his share of points also. He had 3 goals and 7 assists in the tournament. But overall, I think that all 7 games of the World Juniors really showcased Noah Ostlund's complete game. We've talked about that here on Prospect Avenue. His defensive detail, his positioning in the defensive zone is really good. And his reading and anticipation of plays allows him to steal pucks, intercept passes. We saw a little bit of everything from Noah Ostlund at both ends of the ice, and I thought that he was just fantastic from start to finish. But numerically, the 10 points was solid. He was tied for 4th among scoring leaders in the tournament. 13 of his 14 shots on goal. I don't know if you were following on Twitter, but I was tracking Ostlund's shot chart. 13 were from the house. And that one that was from not inside of the house was right along the goal line, bad angle shot where he was probably like 8 feet from the net, and he was trying to get a rebound opportunity. So again, a good thought there, even though it was a shot attempt from outside of the house, a shot on goal. But he was just excellent. 20 minutes and 16 seconds that he averaged from a time on ice perspective that led all Sweden's forwards in the tournament. And it was right up there as well amongst the tournament leaders overall, fourth amongst all the forwards in the tournament. So he was out there in all the key situations, but I love the shot quality that he generated. That puck was absolutely on a string all tournament. We've talked about his puck control and his stick handling and his ability to think fast. But there were some plays in the tournament too, especially I think of that Ryan Leonard goal in the third period of the gold medal game where Ostlund was draped on his back and just couldn't muscle him off the puck, couldn't really disrupt him. Now, Ryan Leonard is kind of a truck out there, very like sturdy, thick, hard-nosed player. He's very strong on the puck. So that's a tough one for Noah Ostlund. That's a tough one for any well-developed hockey player to knock him off the puck. But I think it showed that was one example of a couple where that strength development that needs to happen with Ostlund over the next 2-3 years for him to really take his game to the next level. He has every other tool except that body strength. And he can succeed if he doesn't have to be the strongest guy out there. You just want to see a little bit more muscle, a little more strength to help him in some of the battles. But I think that, you know, his processing is so fast. Like when he comes to Rochester next year, when you watch Ostlund and he gets the puck, his head is immediately up, he's scanning, and he moves and thinks quickly. And that's going to help him overcome the transition to the smaller ice surface when he gets to the American Hockey League next year, because he'll be able to think and play fast. And that'll help him counteract the strength part of it as he's building mass, you know, in the next couple of years. His ability to play quick, I think, is really going to help his transition next year. But this tournament overall, I thought really showcased his two-way game. And I thought he did just excellent for the Swedes out there leading the way. On his line was Anton Wallberg. So, you know, with that top line of Wahlberg on wing, Lekkerimäki on the opposite wing, and Noah Ostlund at center, you know, Lekkerimäki and Ostlund, they were the skill guys. They were generating a lot of shot attempts. You know, Anton Wahlberg had a good amount of shots on goal in this tournament as well. He had 16 in total, which was fourth most on Sweden's roster after Lekkerimäki, Liam Ogren, and the defenseman Axel Sandin Pellikka. But his role was really to be that big net front presence, win board battles, work the corners, be kind of a mule beneath the goal line. And I think he succeeded in that regard. He was very noticeable in just about every game of the tournament, being that big body, especially getting to the net front. I thought overall, Anton Wahlberg's performance was really a carbon copy of his season to date resume that he's put together with Malmo in the Swedish Hockey League, where he's been a second line winger for pretty much all season long. So the tournament showed his full range of abilities, came back deep on the forecheck, really supported the defenseman well, working the corners, like I said. And even on a few occasions, you saw Wahlberg come in, gain the zone, and use his speed around the edge to take defensemen wide, get some shots on goal, and create a little chaos in front of the opposition's net. Rebound opportunities were popping up there from those plays that Wahlberg was making. So overall, I thought he did an excellent job. I mentioned already that Ostlund's going to be a guy that you're going to see in Rochester next year. I think Anton Wahlberg also makes that transition next year with Ostlund to the American Hockey League, and he'll be a young player. I mean, Wahlberg was the second youngest player on Sweden's World Junior roster this year. So the expectation is that he'll be back again playing in the tournament next year, probably playing a pretty big role with like a David Edstrom, Felix Unger Sorum, Otto Stenberg. They have some pretty quality forwards coming back. Anton Wahlberg is going to be right in the thick of things. And I think with that tournament being played in Ottawa next year on a North American sized rink, Wahlberg getting a good half a season of work in Rochester is only going to help him be a very, you know, dominant physical figure anyways in that 2025 World Junior Championship in Ottawa. So I like the two Swedes. It was great that they played together, get some chemistry going. And overall, I mean, I know they're disappointed not winning the gold medal on their home turf, but I thought Ostlund and Wahlberg both had very good tournaments, with really Ostlund being that guy that stood out. We talked about it ad nauseum leading up to it whether it was here on Prospect Avenue or on any appearances I make on Sabres Live, that I thought the hockey world was really going to know who Noah Ostlund was at the end of this tournament. And I believe they do. Pace, stick handling, defensive detail, has it all. Now let's just get that strength going, and the Sabres have themselves a really, really nice piece down the middle moving forward. So those are the Swedes taking home a medal there, a silver medal. And the Sabres also had Jiri Kulik there leading the way for the Czechs, and they took home a bronze medal. So Kulik, no surprise, was absolutely awesome offensively. 6 goals, 12 total points, co-led the tournament in scoring along with Cutter Gauthier from the Americans. But we mentioned it before that, the points were great. We expected Kulik to generate a ton of shots on goal, and he did. He co-led the tournament with 34 shots on goal, 18 of which were from the house area. And it's all about, though, it wasn't really a hockey development move for Kulik. It was about the leadership development. And that's the biggest takeaway for me from Kulik at the 2024 World Junior Championship. If you look at their first game, they came out flat. Kulik looked a little tired, but the team overall did not play well. They got their doors blown off by Slovakia. I think the score was 6-2. After the game, Kulik, who was wearing the captain's C on his Czech jersey, was very vocal after the game in the Czech press. Talk about, this isn't going to go like this the rest of the tournament. We didn't come to play. This is it. Let's get it out of our system and move on. And he was the guy that really led the way both on and off the ice. He came out the very next game. He got the hat trick plus an assist against Norway. But even in the critical moments of every game from there on in, they were going to Kulik for the big moments in the tough minutes. Even in that gold medal game, they were down. The Czechs were, I think, 5-2 at one point in that game against Finland. I'm sorry, in the bronze medal game. I think I just said gold medal game. I apologize. In the bronze medal game. And Kulik was the guy that got him back. He had 2 goals and 2 assists in that game. There was another player on their team that had 5 points, but it was really Kulik scoring the big goals with some nice plays, secondary assists. He was just generating opportunities in that second and third period. That was the leadership on the ice, but also I think it was noteworthy what he did off the ice. So I mentioned 18 of 34 shots on goal were from the house. And he scored a couple goals from outside of the house. I think 2 of his 6 goals were scored outside of the faceoff dot on the power play. And overall, though, it's funny because anytime there's a highlight of Jiri Kulik scoring from that right wing side on the power play, social media gets a buzz with, oh, here we go. We got another Victor Olofsson. And I just want to say it once and not spend a lot of time on it. The similarities end there with the big howitzer from the right side. Kulik's been playing center. He's very defensively mature at this point now, especially in the under 20 group, but he's made such progress playing center in the last 10 months or so that there's no comparison really. They're different players completely. They both just happen to have huge shots, but that's it. And I'm not taking a shot at Victor Olofsson. I mean, he's worked very hard as a 7th round draft pick to carve out an NHL career. 28 goals is nothing to sneeze at. And who cares if you're a power play producer? The power play matters, especially look at the Sabres this year. If the Sabres were more competent on the power play, there's a good chance that might be higher in the standings. But Kulik does a little bit more than just score power play goals. But I thought it was funny during the tournament. It was a pregame show. Marty Baron was doing some video work showing Nathan McKinnon and Steven Stamkos on the left side of the power play, and where they set up. They actually set up just inside the circle, inside the house. And I'm starting to wonder if that's the next part of Kulik's development that the Sabres want to work on. He's comfortable being a little bit wider just outside that edge of the house. And he's amazingly accurate, so it doesn't hurt him. But if you can move him inside a little bit more, the plays are going to happen quicker. He's going to get a different angle of attack on the net with his accurate shot, and it's going to provide better rebounds when those shots are stopped. It doesn't hurt him right now, though, because Kulik he doesn't miss high and wide. He either scores or he gets it on net almost every time he takes that big PP one-timer. But I thought that was interesting video work that Marty put together showing Stamkos and McKinnon both inside that left circle. And that would be really cool if they can get Kulik to do the same thing on the right side. So we'll see if that's something that the team works on in the second half of the season here. But Kulik, just to spend a little bit more time on him, he ends his World Junior career as the 13th highest scorer in tournament history. So he had 29 points in 21 total World Junior games over the last 3 tournaments. 15 goals. His 15 goals in that tournament are 10th best all time. So a prolific international under 20 tournament scorer. Jiri Kulik walks away. That's a feather in his cap. But the crazier stat that I noticed when digging into his numbers a little bit was he only took 1 minor penalty in those 21 games. So now you're looking at a very disciplined guy that can score. Not bad. So now what's next for Jiri Kulik? Well, if you go back to last season, he came back from the World Juniors and he had 17 goals in his final 30 AHL games. And then he had another 7 goals in 12 playoff contests. So now this year, before he left the tournament, he was leading the AHL when he left for Sweden with 16 goals through 23 games. And like I said, that tournament last year, that experience, that success that he had leading the way as the guy, he brought it back, and it was a big time launch point into the second half of the AHL season. The Amerks are going to need Kulik to have a similar effect on the lineup. He comes back he should be very proud of what he accomplished in this tournament. Look, I wanted him to score 10 goals. I thought it would have been a cool number, especially just considering what he did at the under 18s 2 years ago and what he did at the World Juniors last year with 7 goals in 7 games. Okay, he didn't get 10 goals. I get it, but man, he was the man. He hit the leadership on all marks. And I just think that the confidence that he should come back to the AHL with should pay off. And hopefully he can have another big second half of the season like he had last year, because Lord knows the Amerks need it. They had a little bit of a snag without him. At one point in December, I know they had won just 2 of 10 games. So they need to hit the rebound, and Kulik's going to be a big part of that, obviously. Get the band back together, maybe on that line with Isak Rosén and Linus Weissbach, and see if they could take it from there. So we talked about the medalists. Let's talk about the guys that did not walk away with a medal, and I think the proper place to start is with Matthew Savoie. Very disappointing statistical tournament for Matthew Savoie with just 1 assist in his 4 games. And I don't think it was because of lack of effort, though. Man, when the eye test itself, when you saw Savoie out there, I mean, he led all of Canada's forwards in ice time in the first game. You go into that game, though, when the stakes were really elevated against Sweden. And outside of Macklin Celebrini, Matthew Savoie was probably Canada's best forward. His speed, his shiftiness, his ability to attack the middle of the ice. He was one of the very few that was able to cut through Sweden's defensive layers. And he got a couple shots on goal in that game. He had 9 shots on goal in the tournament. All of Savoie's shots on goal were right from the slot area, right around the hash marks and down, right from the middle of the ice. So obviously all from the house. But no doubt Canada needed to get more out of him production-wise on the score sheet. There's no question about it. For him to walk away with no goals, that's a disappointment for him. It's a disappointment for Sabres fans. I get it. But I don't think that he played as poorly as the stat sheet might suggest. Not making excuses for him, but it's clear when you watch the games that that line that he was on for the most part with Matthew Poitras and Easton Cowan, they just didn't gel. There wasn't a lot of chemistry there. And I think when you go back to that Sweden game, it was clear that Savoie was going. I think that Canada's coaching staff was just too late to identify the need to juggle lines. By the time they moved some things around, they put Celebrini up there and replaced him on that Poitras Savoie line, took Cowan off that line. They were looking really good. Savoie had that breakaway, and I felt so bad. So if you remember in that Sweden game, he had the breakaway all alone. The puck rolled off his stick, didn't even get the shot on goal off. And I felt horrible for him. I felt horrible for Canada too, because if Savoie would have been able to score that goal, that could have changed the complexion of that entire game. But it didn't. It wasn't meant to be. And I almost wonder too, if you noticed on the broadcast, Savoie kind of was wincing in pain a little bit after that breakaway. I wonder if that's where he may have tweaked something that caused him to get the MRI and miss Canada's next game. But yeah, the chemistry thing there, though, that's kind of what I'm stuck on. How did they not put Savoie with Connor Geekie in that tournament? They were together in a pre-tournament game, and Savoie was dynamite in that game. And they had, they played together this year in Wenatchee. They played together a little bit last year, not a ton, actually. They were mostly on separate lines last year in Winnipeg, but I thought that was a miss by the coaching staff. And regardless of what happened, Savoie now is going to go back to the Western League. He was traded to the Moose Jaw Warriors right at the end of the tournament. So Moose Jaw is absolutely loaded. A couple of his World Junior teammates are now going to be his teammates in Moose Jaw. That's defenseman Denton Matejchuk, Braden Yeager, Jagger Furcus, who was kind of called to fill in the event that Savoie couldn't complete the tournament. They also have Atlee Calvert there, who was a Sabres development camper a couple of years ago. Really good squad that's loading up for a run. So Savoie's going to go there with 2.18 points per game that he amassed with Wenatchee. He had 11 goals and 24 points in 11 games. And hopefully that sour taste in his mouth is going to maybe provide a little fuel to the fire for him the rest of the way here. He has that letdown of not winning the WHL championship last year with the Winnipeg Ice to kind of chase, now that he's with Moose Jaw, new teammates, new environment, maybe it gives him something, just keep his foot on the gas pedal here. But hopefully that disappointing tournament that he had with Team Canada is enough to just keep him at a high level here in Moose Jaw. He was one of the WHL's probably the standout performer last year in the WHL playoffs. And Moose Jaw, that's what they're banking on. They gave up a ton of assets to pick up Savoie from Wenatchee. But yeah, Wenatchee, they had a tough decision to make. First year in that market, they were in second place at the time of making that trade, but they elected to load up for the future. That franchise spent a lot of assets over the past 2 years acquiring talent to take deep playoff runs. Their draft pick cupboard was pretty bare, and they just decided to make a decision to set that franchise up for the future. So they sent Connor Geekie out to Swift Current, and Savoie goes to Moose Jaw. But overall, the takeaway again, disappointing tournament for Savoie, no doubt, but it doesn't really impact his outlook for me. I'm still willing to look at what he did in the Prospects Challenge. I'm still willing to look at the body of work he put together, that limited small sample size that he had with the Rochester Americans, where he looked really good playing with Kulik and Isak Rosane. So tough tournament, no doubt. Tough tournament for Canada as a whole. Very disappointing showing for them. But let's see if Savoie can, really be that dominant figure that he should be the rest of the way here in the Western League. So we talked about the medalists. We talk about Savoie. The biggest takeaway for me, the highlight of the tournament for me, believe it or not, it wasn't Noah Ostlund's play. It was Maxim Strba, big right-handed defenseman from Michigan State, who led the way for the Slovakians. He was awesome all tournament. Tied for second among all tournament defensemen with 7 points. He had a goal and 6 assists. The leading defenseman had 8, and there was another defenseman, like I said, with 7 because he tied for second. And those players both had 7 games. Strba did it playing 2 fewer games. He only played 5 games in the tournament. But yeah, he played the toughest even strength minutes for Slovakia, played first PP and first PK units. He was just kind of running that show. Slovakia's time on ice leader with 23 minutes and 38 seconds of work, right up there amongst the tournament leaders in that regard as well. But I was on the pregame show with Duffer and Marty on Saturday the 30th. That was the Columbus game. And I kind of mentioned that Strba was playing like that old school Roman Josi role where he was just doing everything for Slovakia, kind of like how Josi used to do before they kind of slashed his PK minutes a bit for the Nashville Predators. But overall, an amazing tournament for Strba. It really showed his offensive game that we don't always get to see. We've talked about him having that offensive potential. He does a great job getting shots through from the point. That's an uncanny ability that he has to get low, hard shots through. He doesn't do it a ton right now at Michigan State. He's really focused on his defensive zone responsibilities there with the Spartans, but he was a little bit more ambitious carrying the puck. He was stepping up into the deeper into the offensive zone more, just had more command, more confidence with it because he can do it at that level. But you started to see that upside that we've talked about that exists in Strba's game. So now over the next couple of years, and I do believe maybe 2 more years at Michigan State, it's probably best for Strba. He'll know what's best, but really, I just don't think there's any need to rush him. It's going to be very tantalizing for the Sabres to have this guy. He's probably going to play at 6'2", 205 or so by the time he becomes a pro. And that's a right shot D who's physical. they're going to want to get him into the system, but I think it's best for him to let him just be mature. And I say it all the time, college is the best years of our lives. Let him be that kid. Let him play that pivotal role in a very nice conference there. The Big Ten is always stacked, and he'll come out at the right time. But the one thing about Strba, man, and he can play in the World Juniors next year too. He's already played in 3. He could play in a 4th World Juniors next year, which is just wild to think about. And I'm sure he will. But at the end, it was the end of that game against Finland. He fell to the ice with 1:34 left, and that just led to that go-ahead goal that Finland scored late in the game. Now, the Slovaks came back and tied it up on like the very next shift. It was unbelievable. It's a crazy game. But then they go to overtime, and Jiri Kulik is coming through the neutral zone with speed. Strba's defending the left side of the ice, and he's got a forward there kind of guarding the middle that was a little bit behind him. Now, Strba is definitely the last line of defense for sure, but I think he knew that he had a forward there to support him. So he made a play on the puck, and Lanin just went right around him, blew past him with speed, took the middle of the ice, and that forward that was there kind of backing up Strba bailed on the support, and that was history. Lassila went right in there and just blew right past him and scored that game-winning goal. It was an unfortunate end. I mean, that's Strba's check at the end of the day. Made a play on the puck thinking he had support. But overall, look, it doesn't put a damper on the tournament that he had overall. He was an absolute two-way workhorse for Slovakia, a standout amongst all the defensemen in the tournament, really. And rightfully was named one of Slovakia's 3 best players in the tournament. So really good on Maxim Strba and the performance that he had. I wanted Sabres fans to get familiar with him, and I think they did. Hopefully that Sabres fans came away really impressed with this player's overall abilities, his physical, and a little bit of the offense that he showed. Lastly, there are 2 more players to talk about. One is Canada's goaltender, Scott Ratzlaff. We'll get to him in a second because he didn't play, but he certainly had a busy weekend with Seattle in the WHL when he did get back. But just real quick on Norwin Panaka, big 6'2" left-handed defenseman who played for Team Germany. This was really a solid learning experience for Panaka to play in the World Juniors this year for Germany. Coming into the tournament, we talked about it here on Prospect Avenue. The goal was to make the team get some experience playing in that environment and slowly break off more responsibility as the tournament played out. And that's exactly what happened, actually. He started off as a bottom pair defenseman. He had to overcome some shaky moments in the beginning. I mean, he was matched up with some really tough forwards in some of those games. But overall, very steady showing. And by the time they got to their 4th game, Panaka was moved up into the middle pair role. If you go to that relegation game that they played, I think he was 3rd amongst all of Germany's defensemen in minutes. He had just over 20 minutes of work in that final game where they won and avoided relegation. So they'll be back next year, and so will Norwin Panaka. But overall, I think he acquitted himself very well. He only had 1 point in the tournament. It was a goal, and it was a really great play, a smart read where he was at the blue line and jumped up into the play because he saw that he had a lane to go to that left post, took a pass and buried it. Great opportunity, great play to go up. And of course, good for him to bury it. He hasn't had a goal this year yet for Chicoutimi. So it's really nice for him to go back to the big ice surface, step away from the queue for a little bit, get the experience and score a goal. That had to feel really good for the kid. But I think that, like I said, learning curve, and he's going to be expected to be a big minute muncher next year for the German attack when they look to improve upon their 2024 World Junior showing next year in Ottawa. All right. So that's the World Junior recap. Let's talk about some goalies. So last episode of Prospect Avenue talked a little bit about Tomas Lanin. He, at that time, he hadn't played since November 28th. Well, I'm happy to report that he did get into a game recently, actually 2, with Jyväskylä's Liga squad. So on January 3rd, and you can find the video, by the way, I cut up all of Tomas Lanin's action in that January 3rd game. It was a 6-3 loss to Karpat. Lanin came on in relief after Vami Mariala let in 5 goals on his first 8 shots. But you can find that cut video, that season pass video, on the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. Please go watch it, like the video, leave a comment. It helps the algorithm, just like leaving a comment here and liking this video would also help. But overall, Really solid performance in Lanin's first action while waiting to get back on the ice for over a month. And he then parlayed that performance into another start on Saturday against Ilves Tampere, where he made 25 saves on 27 shots. Very tough matchup. Ilves has been in the top 1 or 2 teams in Liga all season long. So took the 2-1 loss, but looked really good in that game as well. So he's got his confidence back, a little bit of mojo back. This is a solid goaltending prospect. I understand that statistically, and maybe even with the eye test, he hasn't looked fabulous since being drafted. He's had some injury troubles. He's had some inconsistent play, played on a bunch of teams last season. So now figuring out, is he going to stick in the Liga here, or what's best for Lanin's development moving forward? I think he's got the confidence now to go out there and hopefully earn more starts. He should have the confidence of the coaching staff to have them throw him a little more action here with JYP, but it's a new coaching staff. They fired their previous coach right before Christmas. This new coach has to go out there and win games. He has to put his best lineup on the ice every night. And Vami Mariala at age 26, I want to say, is probably their best option in net more often than not. Well, that puts Lanin in a tough position because he needs to see shots. He needs to develop. I'd like to see him get a couple more starts here with JYP, but I imagine that a loan to their Mestis affiliate, QPA, is probably very realistic. It may have been something that was coming pretty quickly here in January if he wasn't able to get in to any of those games with JYP last week. So we'll see what shakes out. But I think in the bigger picture here, he's in his second post-draft year right now. And the Sabres and his agent and JYP leadership, they all have to get together and figure out what's the best situation for Topias Lanin to be in next year. They're going to have to find him a place to play next year, whether it's JYP or elsewhere, that's going to afford him the opportunity to see the ice. And well, I guess more to come on that, but that's kind of where my mind would be if I were the Sabres hockey department trying to figure out how do we get this kid to develop. He's a massive human being. He presents himself very big. Couple things to work on, obviously, footwork, just sharpening some of those things up, but the potential is there. I'm telling you, you'll see it for yourself when you take a look at some of the videos that I'll continue to throw up on the Season Pass series on the YouTube channel. All is not lost. He just needs to play, and he's got some runway here ahead of him to develop over the next 2 years. And it's going to be critical that he gets in a situation where he can play. Simple as that. So more to come on that. Now, another goaltender, Scott Ratzlaff. I hinted at this earlier. Did not see a minute of work for Team Canada at the World Juniors, and that's okay because his goal was to just make the team this year, be part of the program, await his turn, and that should set himself up very nicely for the 2025 World Juniors in Ottawa. Canada will be playing on home ice. They'll be amped up. Well, I'll tell you what, man, Ratzlaff is in a good developmental situation in Seattle, and here's why. They're near the bottom of the Western Conference standings. That implies that he's going to see a lot of shots every night. So he got on the bird from Sweden, came back to Seattle, jumped into action right away in Friday and Saturday's games, and he stopped 87 of 92 shots in 2 games over the weekend. A 2-1 loss to Prince George, and then a 4-2 loss the very next night at Everett. That game against Everett, he made a career-high 54 saves. So he had a .946 save percentage over the weekend. Apparently, the time change didn't really impact this kid. Man, to be young, I couldn't do that. But I just wanted to point that out where, he had a little bit of a layoff there because he didn't play, only saw some practice pucks, gets right back into it and performs very well. Took 2 losses, I understand, but stopping 87 to 92, it's a pretty nice number, especially on that team where there's not a ton of support ahead of him. So he's going to continue to see a ton of shots here in the second half of the season for the Thunderbirds. And he will, keep his development going. He's in a very good situation there, and he should pull the majority of the starts moving forward for the Thunderbirds. All right. We're already over 30 minutes, so I'm going to be pretty quick. I just want to get to some odds and ends real quick on a couple other Sabres prospects. And I want to give a shout out to Vami Mariala. Mariala has continued to hold down that second line center position for TPS Turku in Liga. But more importantly, very noticeable, he's getting to the net more He's going to the dirty areas. It's official now. He's definitely not a perimeter player. We didn't think he was, but he was doing a lot more work early in the season using the space that he was afforded on the power play. Now he's really starting to become a more effective, even strength player. So as a result of this, it was a natural progression. Okay. He has 4 goals and 2 assists in his last 6 games. He's brought his stat line up to 8 goals and 23 points on the year. He is now second in team scoring, 3 points off the lead. Not too shabby for a kid that's still 20 years old, doesn't turn 21 for a few more weeks here at the end of January. So good on Mariala. I mentioned, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before that, it's Golden Helmet Watch. He is very much still on Golden Helmet Watch for TPS Turku. Wanted to also take a couple minutes and talk about left-handed defenseman Mats Lindgren of the Red Deer Rebels. Been watching him a lot more lately because he's going to be coming up on his contract decision later this spring. He's the first thing is you notice about him is he's just a fabulous, masterful skater, great edge work, walks the line at the top of the zone, very fluid mover, great transporting the puck. That's the first thing that stands out about him, and that's usually a good thing. His carrying the puck, his ability to jump up in the play. He looks big and fast at the Western Hockey League level, as he should, as a 19-year-old drafted into the National Hockey League. But it's also because of the 11 pounds, I think it was, of mass that he put on over the summer. So that 11 pounds, that mass, that added strength, it's definitely leading to year-over-year growth on the defensive side of the puck. You're noticing that this year. He's not a big-time stopper just yet, but he's very competent at that level. And, so you start to think about it and the contract decision. But I want to look at the year-over-year growth. And if the Sabres can still forecast and project more year-over-year growth in 2025 and 2026, he's a skating defenseman, and you probably still have room for that, even though he's a left shot and you have some other left shots that you want to, develop in this organization. But if you look at like Vsevolod Komarov and you look at Strba and you look at Nikita Novikov, you have some physicality there already in the pipeline. You might have room for a guy like Mats Lindgren, who, again, his feet keep him in place. He sticks to his man, and that added strength that he put on over the summer, it's just giving him more leverage, tying up his man, winning those battles on the puck. He needs to make more stops, I think, in the second half of the season to really solidify his position as a viable contract candidate. I think he looks good. The points, the offense, it's there. He's amongst Red Deer's leading point getters from the back end. They were missing his defensive partner for chunk of the season, Hunter Mayo, and he really carried the load in Mayo's absence. Everything looks good optically. It's just a matter now of systemically if that's what they want to do in the system, because what it boils down to is when you're making a decision on Lindgren, you're not just making it singularly on the player, but you're also evaluating him versus all the other guys that are going to be out there, mainly college free agents. And, managing the number of contracts that you have and how many you want to allocate to the defensive position. But for me, I think Lindgren's a guy that you can forecast more growth moving forward, and he's going to be worth the contract look. So I just wanted to mention on that, but I'm going to keep watching his games, keep looking for him to use that added strength to develop defensively. That's the biggest thing that I'm continue to look for with him, but all signs are looking good right now. We'll see. I don't know what the Sabres think about him, but I just wanted to kind of give an update there because we haven't really talked about him a ton this year. And then lastly, as we approach the 40-minute mark this week, final shout out has to go to Amerks rookie winger, Victor Neuchev. So funny thing happened in mid-December with Victor Neuchev. He was rewarded for the good habits. Seth Appert talks about habits a lot. And he started talking about Victor Neuchev's good practice habits and good game habits. And he was a pretty mature, polished player, even though he was 19 and now 20 years old when he came over here this season from Russia. I think that year of playing and being around adults all year in the KHL with Avtomobilist really set him up well to make a nice transition in North American hockey this year. But in the mid-December timeframe is when you saw him put up on a line with Brandon Byro and Lucas Rusek. And then later on at the end of the month of December, they put him on a line with Isak Rosane and Mason Jobst. And then they replaced Jobst on that line at center when Tyson Jost went down. So then you had Rosane, Tyson Jost, and Victor Neuchev. But all this promotion is doing and the overall improvement in his game is doing, it's getting to bring out the best in his skill set. So he's a shooter. He's really good off the rush, but he's really good at rotating out of the cycle and getting himself into scoring position and using that great shot that he has. And his game is really starting to take off. When you play with more skilled players, you're going to get more shot opportunities, right? It just makes too much sense. That's what's happening with Victor Neuchev. In the first 15 games of the season this year, he was averaging 1.2 shots on goal. Since December 13th, when he was bumped up with Rusek and Byro, and then, he started to shift down to other higher level players in the lineup, he's now averaging 2.4 shots on goal per game. So he's doubled his shooting production. But really what's going on is that he's picking up more points too. He has a goal and 4 assists in his last 6 games, points in 3 straight, but he's noticed to be getting more shot attempts. And I think that was important to note, that his game is going to the next level here. It's a good sign. It's what you want to see from a young player, is that progress. We tend to take a look at players in 5-game blocks, and his last 5 games have been excellent. The 5 games before the last 5 were really good too. So now if you start to look at the second half of the season, I don't want to sit here and say like the sky's the limit for Victor Neuchev, but with the Amherst coming out of a slump here, they're going to need guys like Neuchev, and you get Kulik back, and it just makes the lineup better. It creates competition on those top 3 lines. And those young players could be major factors to what we think could be a successful second half here for the Rochester Americans, coming off a very difficult December. I just said a lot in 40 minutes. I hope you got a lot out of it. I'm tired. Today is Sunday, by the way. It's dinner time. Going to go make a meal. Maybe have a little cocktail, get ready for the Bills-Dolphins game. It's going to be a really nice Sunday night here in the Baker household. I hope that you have a lovely Sunday evening and a great week ahead as well. 2024 is going to be a great year. And I thank everyone for coming to Prospect Avenue every week or every 2 weeks, depending on the frequency of when I'm able to squeeze this podcast in. But I truly do appreciate all the downloads, audio on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and of course, all the clicks here on the YouTube channel. So if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. And wherever you get your podcast, by the way, please leave a 5-star review. Say whatever you want about me in the comment section. I don't care. The 5-star review is very important to keeping this successful. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you again next time right here on Prospect Avenue.